guys, we have a lot to discuss this week. There's never a dull moment in the SEC. And it got this piece of hair that just wants to stick straight up today, guys. It got even more complicated last night because LSU let go of Brian Kelly. So, I mean, we'll get into it. There's so many facets to this. Were you guys following throughout the day like I was, where like Hamill was like, discussions are being had, and then there was a tweet that was like, the assistants have been told to leave the facility, which like, yeah, that's never good. And then you've got Brando coming on saying like, it's not going to be Kelly. Kelly's not going to be fired. There probably is going to be a firing, but it's absolutely not going to be Kelly. This was a wild story to watch.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, I was keeping up with it throughout the day. And one of my buddies who doesn't have Twitter, I would just like sending him a screenshot of every new Thamel tweet. Like, okay, maybe it's going to happen. It's going to happen in like 10 minutes, dude. But that really was crazy. But Brando, jokes aside, like this clearly was a very toxic situation at LSU because you have former players like literally taking victory laps over Brian Kelly right now that he's fired. He never
Brock's video.
Yeah, it was hysterical. That was awesome. But like, it's clear that he just never really fit the culture there. Fake accent to kick off the tenure is never a good sign. But then you had the reports that he was in like a tense discussion with the AD over who to fire and everything. When you're willing to pay that much money to get rid of a guy, you know that the situation is bad. And it wasn't even necessarily the win-loss overall, because this year they still would have won 7 or 8 games. But I think just the culture fit for Brian Kelly at LSU was not good. And if you're in Baton Rouge, I would pull your kids out of the sports league, because if they break their legs, that hospital is not going to be able to help them for the next 2 or 3 months.
34-14, I believe, was his record that he was fired at. Just for context for Gator fans, Dan Mullen was fired at 34-15. TJ, I think when this hire was made, we didn't do this show, but you and I did shows together at that point. And one of the things we talked about was that it is a weird culture fit. And I think that is something that's not necessarily a measurable, but it's so important when you're making a hire. But I'm not sure that there's any place in the country where it's more important to be a culture fit than LSU.
Yeah, I saw somebody tweet this, and I don't remember who it was, but there are very few programs, like if we remove our bias, because I'm going to say this and Allie's going to disagree, I can already tell. But I think the idea of committing to a program is almost dead in college football.
Go on.
I just think people commit to coaches at this point, and they don't commit like people. There are some, but for the large majority, like people aren't growing up lifelong fans of a program. Now you have your legacies, and there are certainly exceptions to every rule. But I think with the advent of NIL, with how relationship based this thing is, with recruiting being pretty national now, where it used to be very, very regional, I don't think that people will commit. LSU might be the one exception to that, like because they're the only state school there, because of just the geographic advantages that LSU has with that. Like, and so that said, they were still able to get a lot of talent, but LSU like thrives on being genuine and like fitting that culture. Yeah. And a lot of times the kids that do come in do fit their culture because they have grown up lifelong fans from the, from the Bayou or from that state. And so that's not necessarily the case with every other
just
college
in Ohio State. What would you say is the culture of Ohio State versus you can absolutely.
There is less of a culture.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the same everywhere. Like there's not a specific like Tallahassee culture or Gainesville culture. Like they're pulling kids from all over the state.
Notre Dame.
Louisiana very much feels like that.
I think Notre Dame has a culture that's very specific that you kind of fit.
Yeah, so does Stanford. But
there's a few places where there's a culture, but I don't know that there's anywhere that has as unique a culture as LSU. And therefore you can tell if somebody sticks out, and Brian Kelly stuck out like a sore thumb from the absolute jump. That very first basketball game where he was introduced and he used that Southern accent, and we were all like, what is going on? He's from the Northeast. This is the craziest thing we've ever watched. But like, I think you could tell from the jump, he didn't get the culture. The culture's not a Cajun accent. It's a way of life. And I think that was always lost on him. which means this probably wasn't going to work from the jump.
I mean, yeah, and I feel like some coaches get in and they're able to kind of assimilate and kind of like buy into the culture. Like I think, even with like the fake accent and stuff that we thought was weird at the beginning and the recruiting videos and just stupid stuff that he did,
Recruiting videos are so cringy.
you have to like, nobody's asking you to change who you are as like a person, right? Like Brian Kelly could have been like a Northeastern guy that,
Yeah.
made it work. But
Less
I think
miles.
with that, you have to bring people in on your staff, or you have to like really lean on the culture. And it felt like Brian Kelly wanted to come in and do things his way and not be, again, nobody's asking you to change who you are, because we all thought the videos at the beginning were cringy and the accent and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like you've got to be more true to that culture, because if you are, they'll forgive you more, right? Like they'll put up with more crap. And so it felt very transactional. And if they don't like you as a person, I mean, ultimately winning and losing is all that matters anyway. Like, I think FSU fans genuinely like Mike Norvell as a person, but even with that, like you've got to win or lose games. But if they don't even like you as a person, you get so much less rope. Like they're like, okay, well, I think Florida fans, I'll ask you guys. I think as a person, Florida fans like Billy Napier, like thought he was a pretty good guy that did a lot of things well. But I don't even think LSU fans liked him as a person, like ever. Like, and so that's why I was like, all right, dude, they've won a lot of games. Like this isn't a Billy Napier situation where he was under 500. They've won a ton. Now they're terrible against the top 25 and the top 10 and stuff. Like they're bad in big games, but they've won a ton, but they hate him as a person. And that if he would have been as liked as Napier was at LSU, like he'd still be there, but they hated him.
Yeah. I mean, and this is obviously a gamble. But you know what I think his single biggest mistake was? The very first person he fired when he came in was Tommy Moffitt, who was LSU's longtime strength coach. He was there, at least under O and Les Miles national championships. I would have to check to see if he was there under Saban's. And I am not the person that tells you have to retain certain members of an old staff for continuity or anything like that. But you already had probably the best or top 3 strength coaches in the country on your staff who wanted to be at LSU. It was the first person he let go. You want to know where he's the strength and conditioning coach now? Texas A&M. And I think that we have seen the resurgence of Texas A&M's ability to bully people in the last couple of years. And that absolutely comes from employing Tommy Moffitt. And, honestly, I look back, I think that was Billy Napier's first fatal flaw, truly, was his hire at strength coach. I'm not even convinced his second hire at strength coach was actually really good. But when he came in, Nick Savage was the strength coach for the University of Florida. Players went into Napier's office and begged to keep Savage. That's the only person on staff that players actively went in and said, if you retain anybody, make it Nick Savage. You want to know where Savage is the strength coach right now? Ole Miss. There is.
Maybe he'll come back.
I mean, truly, if we get Lane Kiffin, I guarantee you Savage will be coming with them. I just think you can look back when tenures don't work out and see some critical errors. And I think the not being a culture fit was an error on the LSU administration's part. And I think the strength and conditioning decision was a horrible one. But let's talk about the athletic director. So he, between Jimbo Fisher and Brian Kelly, has 2 schools owing $129 million. How does he still have a job?
I don't know. I mean, the fact that him and guys like Scott Strickland can still have jobs as ADs, even though you continuously fail to this extremely, it blows my mind. Yeah, that's an absurd amount of buyout money to owe your last 2 hires. I'm not entirely sure where that's all coming from and where the goodwill is coming from with him, but it was funny seeing that whole develop, like with Brian Kelly and that AD, how the conversation was just, can you fire Joe Sloan? And Brian's like, sure. Can I fire these guys? And the AD just says, no, you're fired. Like that seems like it was a pretty interesting dialogue that they had, but I mean, $130 million in buyout money over 2 coaches. I'm not really sure how that happens.
I would like to be this bad at my job and still get
Dude, it was such, I go back to it. I know we've kind of moved on to the AD, but like, it just never fit.
No.
Like your LSU, we'll talk, okay, and we're going to move on here in a minute to like what's next for LSU, but like I mean, you're LSU. You can literally hire. I mean, I don't want to say anyone, but like
Most people.
how many people can they? How many? Okay, maybe this is moving on, but like how many people are untouchable for LSU right now? Like, just think about that. Like Kirby is untouchable. I think Sark is untouchable. I know we'll talk about him in a few minutes.
I think Ryan Day.
Yeah,
Ryan
Day
Day's
untouchable.
untouchable.
Kirby, Sark, and Ryan Day.
Probably
Maybe
DeBoer. Not that they would. I don't know if they would want him anyway. But like, I don't know if you could really pull DeBoer. Even there are guys
Signetti is
with like
probably a no with his buyout.
who
Signetti's probably a no now with his new contract.
Mm-hmm.
probably yeah. But again, but that would be one that I don't even know if like would they entertain.
I don't think it would
that?
be a
Kind of the
culture
same.
fit, but
Yeah, kind of the same
if
thing.
we're talking about ones that are a no,
Lanning is probably up there. His buyout's insane too. You know, his buyout's not even like it's not even disclosed anywhere. But they gave him so much money. I've heard it's just absurd. Not any specific numbers, but like there might be like 5 coaches in college football. And there are other guys too that I think wouldn't leave their alma mater. Like we talk about like Jeff Brom or Brent Key or Kenny Dillingham that like I don't think they're untouchable, but would they leave, for certain jobs that are kind of like their dream jobs? Outside of that, I think there's like 5 coaches LSU can't get. And that was the same back then too. Like you think about when he was hired, they could have literally hired anyone. And at that point, Lane Kiffin wasn't untouchable and Kurt Signetti wasn't untouchable. And Sark and Kirby and DeBoer wasn't untouchable because he was of where he was. Like there were like 2 coaches that were untouchable at that moment. And they went and got Brian Kelly. Like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah, I mean that was an interesting. And what was Brian Kelly doing? And I guess that's the kind of we talk about wanting to fly close to the sun, and that's one of those things. He wanted a little bit more leniency on the type of person he could recruit. He wanted a little more.
I think it's half that, and it's half these coaches know. Somebody described it this way to me. It was so Newberg. Described it this way. Josh Newberg at On3 talked about this when Mike had gone 3 wins to 5 wins, and then it was 2022. And he was saying coaches sometimes need to reset their shot clock. Like the clock is winding down, a basketball analogy, obviously, and they just need to reset that shot clock. And so what he was saying was in 2022, Florida State needed to win like 8+ games to kind of reset Mike's shot clock because it is winding down. You can't have 3 straight losing seasons to open up a tenure. And Florida State did that. They won 10 games, whatever. I think it's the same thing with Brian Kelly. I think he knew that the people up there were kind of tired of always the bridesmaid, never the bride situation. Yeah. And so
they traded that for the same thing, but younger.
Say what?
I said, so they traded it for the same thing, just younger.
I mean, maybe. But I mean, he also got, I think there's more long-term hope with Freeman than there ever was with BK. But like, I think that he needed a change of scenery. And if you've got an opportunity to coach in the SEC with the money they gave him, you're going to take
flying
that.
Close to the sun, in my opinion, is that so many of these coaches just have the need to prove that they are capable of winning at the highest level. And I do think that for most of them, the highest level is the SEC. And it's a handful of programs within the SEC. It's not just getting to the SEC, because I don't think this is the same thing for Vanderbilt. This is part of why I think Lane Kiffin will make the jump to Florida, because I think it's the same thing. It's just not the same level of opportunity. There is a ceiling. And
I'd like to hear Will's take on that too, because Allie's too much of a homer on this. If there was a program, there's a couple of programs where I don't know that people would jump just because it's the SEC. And I might throw like Ohio State and Notre Dame in that mix. Like, I don't think somebody's leaving Ohio State just to get to the ACC. And probably like the same with maybe Notre Dame, maybe Michigan. Like, I do think there are a couple of programs that exist outside of that.
I think there are. I mean, I think you named it. I think Ohio State. Michigan, I think, is kind of close. I think that could be used, based on the guy, you could see a jump. I think Notre Dame, I mean, we saw Kelly do it. Freeman might do it. That one's a little close. I think that overall there's like maybe 2 or 3. I'll put Oregon up there. I think Lanning's happy he moved to Oregon. I think Clemson is there, even though they suck now. But there's definitely only a few schools, and like even within the SEC, like I talked about, like I think job wise, like there's Florida, LSU, Georgia, Tennessee, Bama, and then maybe the rest. Like there's clearly still like a higher level of job even within the conference. Like we'll see. Like now that LSU is open, I think that Lane Kiffin, there's now a 0% chance that he stays at Ole Miss. I thought there was a chance when it was just Florida in play. I think LSU is going to take a shot at him. I still would lean Florida over LSU for that job, but I mean, there's just that higher degree of coaching job. And now, even with these days, like obviously these guys are like type A competitors where they want to go prove that they can do it at the highest level. Even if you don't and this job is available to you, you know that if you suck, they're going to give you $60 million to go home and hang out with your wife. Like, so even if like there's still that risk of losing your job and you don't want to fail, but I mean, there's going to one of these bigger jobs, like you know the check is there, you know the opportunity is there. You just have to go be who you think you are.